Welcome back to the San Diego Opera Podcast. My guest today is the stage director for our opera As One, opening this weekend, November 10th, Kyle Lang.
Hi.
Welcome. How are you?
Good.
Now, this is your first gig directing one of our productions. But it's not your first time at the rodeo.
No, it's not.
So
It's not.
would you let our audience know a little bit about your background with the company? Because you've been here a number of times.
This is my actually fourth season with the company. My first season was the year I did the whole season as an assistant director, starting with Boheme, Don Giovanni, and Nixon in China, were that season.
Ah, great year.
The following season, I was the assistant director for Tosca, and then last season Falstaff, and most recently I was the associate director on Pirates of Penzance.
Right, and so here you are with As One. Kind of a brand new piece. It's only about 3 or 4 years old.
Exactly.
Had you seen it before?
I had not seen it before.
So you're totally new to it?
So totally new. I've seen bits and pieces of other productions. I didn't want to watch too much because I wanted to have a fresh mind and a fresh approach because it is such a fresh piece itself, because it is new and because it deals with the political atmosphere of today.
Right.
So I wanted to have kind of a clean slate and not have any other ideas of how other people presented it. Just in an effort to be honest with the piece, honest for myself with the piece.
Right. Well, that brings up a sort of an interesting area of discussion, because I know what I would do if I were a stage director for Pirates or for Tosca or for Falstaff. What do you do when the material's absolutely fresh? How did you prepare?
First, I studied the score. I studied the libretto first before I studied the music. Because I felt like the narrative of this story is of utmost importance. So I really wanted to really wanted to connect to the words. And not just the words, allow the words to open up an emotional context for the setting. So I started studying the libretto, and then I live in near Washington, D.C. and Maryland. So I began to talk to people in that community, and as well as other people that I know from New York, and kind of hear stories and hear other people's process.
In the transgender
community.
transgender
community, sorry. And just kind of, I guess, try to better understand. I think we all have our journey, and I certainly had my journey, but it is very different than what the transgender community goes through in their coming out process. So I kind of just wanted to gather stories, not to necessarily relate them to this opera, but just to relate the kind of emotional context of each individual story to it.
Right.
And, other things in preparation, I watched a lot of Charlie Rose.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did this wonderful series on genetics and sexuality.
Fascinating.
It's very fascinating. So I kind of also took that kind of, not that in any way came up at all staging, but it's just I felt like I needed to know as much as I could know.
Well, with any piece, directing or preparing it musically, deep background is always important. It's always going to be critical, I think, to what you do. You've got to have information to sort of pull from. I would think. Now, the way this story is told, to me, seems almost cinematic. You've got 3 story sections. One from childhood, one from the point of transition, and then after.
Yes.
Right?
Kind of, I look at it as adolescent, young adulthood, and then kind of the acceptance period, which would be, I hate to put a number on it, but it's that moment when you start to know who you are.
The actual coming out
exactly.
Moment.
Or the acceptance moment.
Yeah. Was that difficult to draw a line through for you, or to communicate that to
the line through?
actors?
The line through wasn't difficult because the structure of the piece itself has it's a crescendo from the beginning to the end. It is definitely a journey that moves up and forward. Even though along that journey there's moments that it pulls back and the questions arise. The piece itself is structured so well that way that connections happened, but they weren't forced. I didn't try to connect certain parts of part 2 to part 1 or images. They just happened because who Hannah is in the beginning is this really the same person as she is in the end. It was just that self-discovery that had to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of cinema, one of the elements that must be a part of the piece is the video element. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a kind of an interesting connection with one of the creators.
Sure.
Of the piece.
The video is really it's really there for atmosphere and to kind of set the stage a little bit, because the piece itself is it's pretty abstract. So it gives you more of a literal context at times, or it at times gives you images that kind of can create a landscape for you. The piece, I staged it in a way that for me was cinematic because I needed to zoom in. And there's a lot of subtlety. So I really wanted to focus in on them and let them put it in emotional context, not a literal memory. Like, I didn't feel the need for them to act out a memory, but just to live the memory.
Right. One of the things that I see in reviews of this piece and hearing from people who have seen it and react to it is that even though the piece is about the transgender transition, and in this case from a male character to a female character, portrayed by two different singers, which I think is fascinating, but that the message of the piece still comes through, even though it may not be a part of the audience member's experience, that there's still something powerful to connect with in the experience of the piece. Do you find that, or is that something that you went after, or did you need to?
I don't think I needed to. I think
it's just inherent to the piece.
Yeah, and I think that everyone in the world, knows either themselves or they know someone who has, whether they realize they know someone, but someone who has dealt with an honest, innocent feeling or thought or way of being, and they're told that is wrong.
Yeah.
That that is not natural. I know for me, I understood my sexuality at a young age before I knew what sex was. So I understand the innocence in just being who you are, or that being an innocent thing. But I think everyone know either themselves or they know someone who has gone through that. I think because of that, everyone can connect to this piece, no matter what the audience is. It could be people who have attended operas here for 25 years. It could be a first-time opera goer. But it is very pertinent to today when we grapple with this problem. Certainly today. Yeah.
It's extraordinary to me every time we have a piece that comments on where we live and how we live and how and who we are, that opera and that theater can still have that effect on us and bring us closer to an understanding of what it means to be a human being.
that's the point of art.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe the point of art is to kind of hold a mirror up to society, and it allows people to see it in different terms, and to separate yourself from your own experience just enough to find a connection of your own experience to the subject.
Yeah. Well, I know we're all looking forward to it. Thank you for coming. The ambulance has come for me again. It never seems to fail. Every other podcast we get a fire engine or ambulance or hammering in the other room or some crazy thing. But Kyle, thank you so much for being with me.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to the performances.
See ya this weekend.
Okay.